Welcome on back to the 4th and 30 podcast. Glad to have you again with us here this week. Am I on a heater for not
I
saying
was gonna say
podcast?
you're on a roll. How
Like
long
3
has
in
it
a
been?
row.
I'm on a heater, guys. Next week I'll throw it back in for you. But anyway, welcome on back. Like we always do, please like and subscribe our content. Banter with us when we post the power rankings on Facebook. If you're not following along on Facebook, go ahead and do that too. We also tweet from time to time. But for now, we're going to get into the good, bad, and future, which there was some good and some bad, and we're getting into the thick of the playoff races in the NFL, so there should be some fun content. So who wants to start out with something, change it up? Who wants to start out with something bad?
I will. The Buffalo Bills. The Bills, I think, I mean, go back, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, and they were the overwhelming favorites in the AFC. I think everyone, and I talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago. Everyone thought with the Chiefs down, it was the Bills to lose. And now the Bills are not even winning their division. They lose to a team that throws the ball 3 times. I don't know what has happened to the Buffalo Bills. I honestly can't tell you what has happened to the Buffalo Bills. Their offense doesn't look like the Bills' offense. Their defense their defense was never great, but their defense is abysmal. I don't know.
Their
I don't know how you
defense.
let a team just run the ball down your throat the entire game and
We were
not.
we were talking about it during the game. I mean, there was times they still only had 7 guys in the box in the second half in obvious running situations.
Well, the whole game was an obvious running situation this week.
But the first quarter or two, you think, oh, Belichick's just doing this. Belichick's being Belichick, and he's going to run it, and then he's going to burn us on a play action when we don't expect it. But that never happened. That never happened the entirety of the game. Jones's 3 passes were kind of dink and dunk passes. And so, yeah, the Bills look bad. I wasn't necessarily a believer in their defense at the start of the year because of the opponents they played to start the year off. But their defense looked like, not necessarily eye test, but statistically, they looked like the real deal to start the year. They were shutting teams out. I think they had 2 shutouts in the first 4 weeks. And then last night they just looked awful. They couldn't. I mean, those zone running plays are coming on first and second down, and they just refuse to stop them.
But hold on, the Bills' defense only gave up 1 touchdown last night, and that was on a long run. It's not all bad. The Bills' defense isn't bad, but I think what's the problem with the Bills is it's risk reward, right? So you build your team around a rocket slinger at quarterback. When that doesn't work, things go poorly. And we've seen it can go poorly for weeks at a time. It's just not clicking. Something's not right. And I think they're in that zone right now. And yeah, they're probably not going to end up winning their division, which is going to be a shock to everybody. But I still don't think they're a bad team. I think you still wouldn't want to play them in January. I'm going to put it that way.
I think the only. Go ahead.
For the Bills, the problem for the Bills is they don't have a run game. They don't have a run game, so that requires your quarterback to be great. And Josh Allen has regressed this year as far as his accuracy goes. I mean, last year he had a great year, MVP type year. He was on fire. This year he's not on fire, and he's missing throws, and they rely on him completely for their offense. Their defense is good, but if the Bills want to get to where they want to get to, their defense is what it is. Josh Allen is the key to that team. He's the key. He needs to be great. Their team's built for him to be great. They don't have much of a run game, like I said. They have good wide receivers, good tight end. That passing game needs to get going if they want to get to where they want to be.
And
One thing I was surprised about, I think I said this a couple weeks ago, they're not a physical team. Teams who get physical with them beat them. One thing I was surprised about, though, in that situation last night, Josh Allen had 6 carries for 39 yards. In that game, they should have been running. I'm not saying Josh Allen should have ran the ball every time, but he should have had more than 6 carries. I don't think there's any reason why Josh Allen doesn't have more than 6 carries in that game.
He definitely should have used his. I even told my wife that sitting there watching the game, the key to this game is Allen running with his legs, and it just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that was what I was getting ready to say. Is he just didn't have it last night? And throwing wise, that's understandable. He throws the ball so damn hard that I'm not sure. The wind was a factor. It was gusting up to 55 miles an hour. But he throws the ball so damn hard. It takes some of the wind proponent out of it. But like last night was a rough game to judge them on an eye test because the conditions were so horrible. But they looked bad last night, and it hasn't been much better in previous games the last couple weeks where the weather has been okay for them. They got a lot of stuff to figure out before the playoffs start, but I don't count them out to come out of the AFC. They've been my choice since week 1, but they've got to figure some things out.
It doesn't get any easier for them. They play at the Buccaneers next week.
Yep. And the thing is, I agree, you can't judge them off of that game, but a championship team finds a way to win that game. Bill Belichick finds a way to win that game. Josh McDaniels has been unbelievable for New England this year. That's one guy who doesn't get enough credit. He has made Mac Jones, people think Mac Jones is a savior, and Mac Jones has had a solid year, but I mean, it's nothing like Justin Herbert had last year or anything like that. They've just put him in the right positions, and that coaching staff is who gets all the credit for New England, and the defense
being able to run the ball like they did last night and not put him in crappy situations to throw the ball when it's, he's not some gunslinger out there. He's a good quarterback. He's not some cannon for an arm guy who can whip it through the 55-mile-an-hour winds, and they did a good job of protecting him from that last night.
Yeah, the Bills did have 2 opportunities to win the game last night on drives that got down there. And so you could argue that they lost on the coin toss because they didn't have the wind in the fourth quarter. You could make that argument that wind was big enough a factor that should have went into play in the coin toss. So,
did you see that throw to Diggs into the end zone over his head? I think they were talking to Aqib Talib at the time, and Aqib Talib's like, "You see that ball moving in the air? The ball was like wiggling in the air. You're like, where's that ball gonna land?"
I sent you that video of that pregame kick, the kicker trying 34-yard kick and just
it was a 34-yard kick, and it looked like it was like the Madden challenge you had where the wind's at 90 miles an hour and it blows it off the side of the stadium.
And that's something that your average Sunday quarterback or Sunday wide receiver doesn't understand, is when a receiver has to turn his head at the last second to find the ball because it's moving right to left so much, that makes that catch, that's a catch in no wind Diggs makes almost every single time. But you could tell he even got his hands around there, and it still hit off the outside of his outside hand or his outside arm, which means that it was just moving too much right to left.
Yep.
Here's an argument that came up on Twitter that it was an argument for pro domes, that they think NFL football should be played in domes. And I don't know where you guys stand on this, but I like a weather game every now and then. So I'm not so much into a weather game in the Super Bowl because you should play football at its finest in the Super Bowl, but middle of the season and stuff, you grow up playing football outdoors. This is what it is. There's no high schools in a dome. So
I'm pro outdoors.
Yeah.
We can only take away from the defense so much before the offense gets out of hand.
So I love outdoors games. I love Arrowhead. I actually hated going to games in St. Louis because of the dome. Like, the atmosphere in St. Louis sucked, to be honest, and the dome was part of the reason why. But at the same time, I do think like a retractable roof in stadiums would be a good idea, because when it comes time for playoffs, I don't think that the weather should be the reason why a team wins or loses a game. And I understand you can argue that's part of the game, but really the team isn't better because they benefit from the weather. The team just,
Well, that argument goes both.
Get home field.
That argument goes both ways, though. Some people truly believe football is believed to be played outdoors. Some teams are built for indoors, and some teams are built for outdoors.
But I was
like the weather last night in Buffalo played into New England's hands, not the home teams.
I agree. But
so teams like New England are on the opposite side of that argument, is what I'm saying.
But it's because New England isn't as good a football team.
That's one side of the argument. New England would argue they're a better football team because of that.
It definitely
is. But if it's in perfect conditions, the Bills are the better team. So I don't know.
But football is not meant to be played in perfect conditions. There's two sides to this argument.
Says who?
Your argument is not just 100% right. There's two sides to it, Kelsey.
I understand, but who says that football's not meant to be played in good conditions? Like that's like saying basketball.
Who says
should
it
be played
isn't,
in
though?
weather and see who's better.
All I'm saying is there's two sides to this argument.
I agree, but I just don't get why someone would
Nobody
think
can sit here and say they didn't enjoy the shit out of that college basketball game that was played on the aircraft carrier. So basketball is not just meant to be played indoors, folks.
Yep. So to piggyback off of us shifting to the weather, is that was my good for the week was the game last night. I love a good weather game. Carl said exactly how I feel about playoffs or about football. The Super Bowl should be played in a dome or a good weather area, Tampa Bay, Southern California, somewhere like that. But I love Smash Mouth football because if I would have ever been played football, I would have been anti-Smash Mouth. But being just a person watching it, I love teams that run the football. And so last night was fun for me to watch. It took a lot of the passing element out of it, and it was just which team is bigger and stronger, and New England won that matchup. New England ran the ball all night, literally all night long. The Bills couldn't stop them. If the weather would have been fine for kicking field goals, New England might have scored 30 points on just field goals, but they couldn't kick the ball from outside of 20 yards because the wind was going to be too big of a factor. But it was a fun game to watch because of that, because of teams were limited to what they could do. It's not great conditions for a Super Bowl type matchup. I don't want that. I want the teams to shine in the Super Bowl. But for a week, what was that? Week were we in? Yeah, I love to see that. I love to see a cold, windy game. Add a little snow in there next week, maybe it'd be even better.
Yeah, it's Buffalo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you expect when you go to Buffalo or New England. I can honestly say that there's never been a snow game where I've just hated. I enjoy watching the hell out of snow games. When you got the guys with the push brooms trying to get the yardage markers, like that is so fun because it's like, man, they're really going through it right now. I enjoy it. So the only sport that shouldn't be played in like super harsh conditions is baseball in Missouri in February. We had to play Milan one year. It was 6 degrees. Both teams threw a no-hitter. And if they wouldn't have had an error, we would have lost that game. Nobody wanted to swing the bat. It was miserable.
it was snowing at our season opener one year. You remember that kind of at Madison?
Yep.
It was snowing while we were on the field, and I was like, dude,
miserable.
When we talk
this is
about
baseball. Come on.
Well, I was warming the bench for the players on the field because that was our freshman
That's
year.
almost colder.
It was rough.
when
I
we
was
were
playing second base.
when we were talking about tackling Derrick Henry in the second half of the season becomes a business decision, that swinging the bat becomes a business decision in that point in time.
Well,
All right.
my bad for the week is the Minnesota Vikings because the 49ers lost, opening the door for Minnesota to kind of gain some ground in the wild card spot, and they lost to the Lions. At this point, I think you have to just think of the Minnesota Vikings as a decent team, but just too inconsistent to be a true contender. I mean, their defense can't give up less than 30 points, even if they're playing the Lions. So I think at this point, even if the Vikings do sneak into the playoffs, they'll be that team one and done. A lot more expectations for them than what they're reaching.
Yeah, so my bad was also the Vikings, and they're sitting at 5-7, which in the NFC doesn't sound that bad when 6-6 is currently in the wild card. The problem is, like, you have the Steelers coming up, and then you have 2 games against the Bears, but you also have the Rams and at Green Bay. So, Steelers, Rams, and Green Bay aren't guarantees. The Bears, you should beat the Bears, but you just lost to the Lions, so you might not. So your chances of getting back to even 500 are slim, which I guess there is no 500 with a 17-game season. But
Except for the Lions and the Steelers, theoretically.
yeah. But it's just going to be rough for them, and I don't see a scenario now where they get into the playoffs.
Lions
I don't
can't
see them
win
being
enough
500.
games.
Yeah. You touched on it. The Vikings defense, man. Ever since they lost to the Saints, their defense has in the playoffs. Their defense has been terrible. They can't cover anybody. I mean, Kirk Cousins is even playing pretty well this year.
He
Like,
had a really good games.
he's having a good season. Dalvin Cook, 2 great receivers. I mean, that offense is good, but their defense is terrible.
Yeah, that was I had 2 bads. That was one of them. I figured somebody else would use that one, so I got another one in the bank. But yeah, that's somebody. The Lions were going to win a game. It was just pretty evident throughout the year they were going to win a game. Somebody was going to look bad after that game. It just happened to be the Vikings, who that was not a big game, other than it was a divisional game. But it's just so Vikings like. You know, they're sitting pretty in a wild card hunt, and then lose a game to the Lions, and now they're on the outside looking in. That's just
Yeah,
The
it wasn't a
Vikings
big
could be
game,
a
but that's a
good
big loss.
the Vikings could be a good or a bad every single week, just depending on the week. Like that's just the team they are. I think every game they've played's come down to one possession, and
They're the
like
Phillip Rivers Chargers.
like
I mean, that's,
10 of them have come down to the last play of the game or something like that.
I think Zimmer's a guy who doesn't have a job come February.
It's a
I
good
think he's
possibility.
done.
yeah.
All right, so
So I'll go ahead with my bad if we want. So I was going to use the Vikings, but I assumed we would all want to talk about that. So my other bad is the Los Angeles Rams' upcoming schedule. Everybody knows. I'll restate it once again. They were my Super Bowl team. Rams, Bills in the Super Bowl. But they have Cardinals, best team in the NFC. Seahawks, who just won a big game. Vikings, who just lost a bad game, but once again, every week they can be good or bad. If that's the week the Vikings are good, that's another tough one. Ravens, one of the best teams in the AFC, and then the Niners, who are fighting for their life for a playoff spot right now.
I actually think it's a good thing for the Rams that they have a tough schedule.
They need it. If they win, they need those tough games to get on the right track and play playoff football. But this could go downhill and quick.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing just due to the fact that if they had a bunch of cupcakes on their schedule and walk into the playoffs, I don't think it does them any justice. They've proven they can beat up on bad teams. They need to prove to themselves that they can beat a good team. And they did it against the Buccaneers. We know they're capable, but they've just got to find their mojo. They're definitely capable of doing it. And I think it's a golden opportunity for them to run some good wins off in a row and get that confidence up to where it needs to be for playoffs.
they're sitting at 8-4, so to make the playoffs, they realistically at the NFC just need to win one game of those 5, and that'll get you to 9-8, and that'll make the wild card in the NFC. So, but that is a rough schedule, and so it's kind of prove it, right? You've had this cupcake schedule till now, and you're sitting at 8-4. That's all fine and dandy, but now you got to prove it. So
yeah, and maybe this last Sunday was a get right game for him. You know, I think you mentioned that, Carl, last week. That could have been a get right game for him, where they take off and go from here. But it's time. You know,
it's definitely time to put up or shut up for the Rams. It could go one of two ways. Like you guys said, I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs because I think they're going to win at least one of those games. But if they go 1-4 to finish the season, then you're not riding a good train going into the playoffs. Now, if they can pull off 4 wins, you know, people are looking at them as a Super Bowl favorite, probably, or one of the favorites.
Contender.
one thing saving them is the Eagles and the football team are both fighting for that wild card spot, and they play each other twice. So, you know, unless one of the teams sweeps it, they'll at least probably get that 7 seed. But
I don't see a scenario where the Rams don't make the playoffs. They have to win one of those 5.
Yeah.
So I mean, the odds are highly in their favor. They win one of those 5. Golf's ghost or not.
the ghost of Jared Goff passed.
All right, so those are all 4 bads, and we've done 1 good so far, so we still have 3 goods. Anybody want to? All right, I can do it. So my good is a team that was actually, if New England would have lost, they were poised to go to number 1 with the Ravens losing, but the Titans. So the Titans it looks like they're going to win their division still, but it does get sticky. So it's good for them in the playoff positioning that the Ravens lost, right? But they still have some prove-it games left too. So everybody's looking at their schedule right now and saying, oh, they only have 1 game left against a team with a winning record. Well, that team is Pittsburgh, but you still have to play the Niners and the Dolphins. So the Dolphins are hot right now. The Niners are getting hot, but you have the Jags and you have the Texans. So those 2 games are winnable.
They've already lost to the Jags once, right? Right? Jags beat them? They lost to the Jets and the Jags.
Titans?
They lost to the Jets and the
Titans.
Texans.
Or was it? It was the Texans,
It was
yeah.
the Texans.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the Texans.
That's right. Sorry.
Anyway, which they have the Texans week 18, so, repeat of that. But, so that schedule, while you have 1 team with a winning record, it's not necessarily the greatest schedule in the world. There's a lot of hiding teams in there. So, what is good for them is going into the playoffs if they can run this table, which is going to be not likely, but if they can run this table, you have to consider them as a real deal threat to be in the AFC Championship at the very least, because that's them proving their mettle without Derrick Henry saying, "Hey, we're still here, we're still playing." So,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good for them that the Ravens lost. I'm going to be honest, I don't see the Titans as a threat, so maybe I'm taking a bad approach at this. But without Derrick Henry, I don't really see a scenario where the Titans get to a Super Bowl. AFC Championship, if they theoretically did get the 1 seed, they would only have to win 1 game to get to the AFC Championship. So that could maybe happen depending on who they play in that 1 game. Right now, though, as it stands, their last 2 games, they got blitzed by the Patriots and lost to the Texans. The game before that, the only game they've won without Henry, they beat a Saints team and barely beat them, and they didn't gain like any yards in that game. Their offense hasn't been productive without Henry. I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at it through the wrong lens. I don't know, but I don't see the Titans as a threat in the AFC, to be honest. But the AFC is wide open. That being said,
I'm not even convinced they're going to make the playoffs they've still got to win a couple games to make the playoffs. I mean, it's possible that Tennessee only wins 1, maybe 2 more games on their schedule, which 2 would get them to 10 wins, put them in a good position. But there's so many teams vying for those wild card spots that you're going to have to win probably 10 games to get in. And, there is 2 wins on their schedule, but can they get it done?
the Colts have 6 losses, and they lost the head-to-head. I don't think that the Titans could possibly miss
the Titans have a
playoffs.
96% chance of winning.
Yeah,
the
it's pretty much a guarantee that the Titans make the playoffs at this point.
We'll
Just
see.
because of
The Colts
I
only
haven't
have-
looked at the Colts schedule, so I don't know if they can win out or not.
If the
So I
Titans win one
did-
game, they're in the playoff.
I did write down the Colts schedule, and they have it kind of rough. They have the Patriots.
They have to win
Arizona-
at least 2.
They have the Patriots, Arizona, the Raiders, and
Oh, yeah,
then
you're
the
right, too.
Jags.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah,
Colts probably not winning out.
no.
You're right. They have to win 2. My bad. If the Colts won out, and the Titans would have to win 2 games to make to guarantee the spot in the playoffs.
I just think the scenario's too likely that they're pretty much a lock for the playoffs at this point, because it's
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to win their division.
But
I
and then
just
we
don't
can
see
see
him
if
as a
Derrick
threat.
Henry's going to be ready.
like Kelsey said, they just haven't looked good since he's been down.
They beat the Rams too without Henry.
One
No,
thing
Henry
that
was
could
in that game.
Henry was not there.
Henry, no, he didn't.
One thing that can be said is it's looked like everybody knows how I feel about Derrick Henry. He's the best in the league right now. But the Titans have looked like anybody can run in that offense, not to the extent that Derrick Henry does, but they've looked pretty good on the ground. But when you don't have to game plan for Derrick Henry, and you don't have to be as worried about their second running back, then
There's one less person in the box, most likely.
yes, and that makes things a little harder on Tannehill. Tannehill's a good quarterback, but he's looked horrible at times. He's looked pretty good at times. But when you don't have that play action threat, when you don't have that extra guy in the box, it's going to make things harder on Tannehill, which therefore makes things harder on the Titans. So obviously, we all think they're probably more than 96% chance they're going to make the playoffs. But how deep of a run can that be if they without Derrick Henry?
That's my fault. I thought that Henry played in that Rams game, and I want to tell LA I'm sorry because I told him on Facebook on our 4th and 30 podcast Facebook that Derrick Henry played in that game. He did not, so that's my bad.
Well, LA, you got an apology from Kelsey before any of us have, and Kyler's known him like 32 years.
Yeah, I'm never getting that apology.
All right, so you want to go to my good?
Yeah.
The Steelers are my good, Kyler. I'm sorry. The Steelers, when everything clicks right, they can be a solid football team. I apologize. The Steelers' defense looked good this week. The offense was complementary of each other. The run game played well. The passing game played well. I honestly think that's about as good as we can see the Steelers look. They played almost perfect for the Steelers, but they looked good this week. And if they can play like that, they can win games. Will they continue to play like that? I don't know. But that was the best I've seen the Steelers look as far as a complete game goes this year.
Kai, hang on. Before you get started, one thing real quick. Kelsey, is your blood sugar all right? You just handed out 2 apologies in about a minute stretch. I'm a little worried about you right now.
I still haven't heard an apology about Big Ben yet, which is what I'm really looking for.
We don't need to talk about that right now. Okay. I still don't. Yeah. My opinion on Big Ben hasn't changed.
So the Steelers' defense looked really good. They needed it. They'd given up 41 points back-to-back games. Just like I said, the Bills' key to winning is Josh Allen. The Steelers' key to winning is their defense. They expect that defense to be great. That's how they built this team. You saw why they brought back Ben Roethlisberger. You see it in the fourth quarter because, yeah, we're not going to put up a bunch of points through the first 3 quarters or whatever. But if you give Big Ben a chance to win in the fourth quarter, he is more likely to come through than a lot of any option that they had, just other than maybe Gardner Minshew. I'll get to him in a second. But this is how they win games. Hopefully, I'm not anticipating this. That fourth quarter, the run game, the passing game started to click. You just hope that continues, or a somewhat resemblance of it. I mean, at this point, I don't think anybody really considers the Steelers a threat, just like the Vikings, they've just been too inconsistent. And their offensive line's been too inconsistent. Their defense has been too inconsistent. As a Steelers fan, you hope that's not the case, but that's where I see this team heading. This is not a surprise that they won this game to me. It might be to some people, but this is just what they do. They hang around. Tomlin's a good coach. He gets them ready to play these games. And, like I said, you just hope they can continue that.
In typical Kelsey fashion, when I admit that I'm wrong, I have a caveat here. Ben Roethlisberger played well, but it was because the running game set up Ben Roethlisberger. He had a lot of open receivers in that fourth quarter. It's because the running game was playing so well. But that being said, if the running game can play like that, Ben can be effective.
Yeah,
TJ Watt's
what I've been saying all year.
Though.
Yeah, Carl just said it right there. TJ Watt's a game changer. The Steelers have been inconsistent for the most part, in my opinion, because the defense has been inconsistent because of injuries. If the Steelers' defense is healthy, that is a championship-level defense. The problem is, and I don't know if this has been Najee, how Najee does in practice, Mike Tomlin, the OC, who it is, but the Steelers haven't until recently been running the ball enough for them to be successful. With an old-ass fat quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, you have to have a run game and put him in scenarios where he doesn't have to move and he can use his cannon for an arm and throw to the open guy and make the smart veteran move. And they've been using Najee more. Am I wrong, Kai? I mean, you watch every game.
The problem with them, they've used Najee plenty. He gets plenty of usage. The problem was their defense was their defense was injured and banged up, and they were giving up too many points and getting behind. That takes the run out of the equation. Their pass blocking is not good enough to not have the running game. But Ben just doesn't have time to throw the ball, and he can't evade the rush. So The Najee usage is fine. The key to them is that defense keeping them into the game where they can continue to run the ball. That's their key.
I'm going to side note that real
if TJ
quick.
Watt isn't in Lamar Jackson's face on that 2-point conversion, Mark Andrews is open as they come.
He walks
and
in.
the Steelers lose that game. So TJ Watt legitimately won that game for the Steelers.
16 sacks. He's only played 10 games. I mean, he's on a tear.
You
Steelers
mentioned
have a rough schedule.
Kai, you mentioned shit, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, Big Ben being able to get away from pressure. Big Ben's never been able to get away from pressure. He used to be able to just run the pressure over. There's a difference there. Yeah, he would literally he would just shrug off the pressure with a stiff shoulder to the face mask of the defender.
Yeah, the Steelers have the Vikings, the Titans, the Chiefs, the Browns, and the Ravens. That is a rough 5-game stretch to end your season.
Yes, but like I said, for the Rams, you don't want a bunch of cupcakes at the end of your schedule. If you're going to do something, if you're going to get in the playoffs and make a run, these are the teams you got to beat. Why not play them at the end of the year? There's teams that will overcome that, come together, like the Patriots have, and win those games. So as a fan, I'm excited that they have a tough schedule going on.
I'm calling it right now. They go 4-1, and their one loss is to the Vikings. That'll be the game out of that stretch that they lose.
That's 10-6-1. That'd be enough to make the playoffs.
I think it would.
But you'd also be
Cody
picking. You'd be picking 22nd in the NFL draft when you're looking for a quarterback.
I think Cody was the first.
Speaking of which, go ahead, Kelsey.
First person in 3 years to say that Ben Roethlisberger had a rocket of an arm.
The theory that his arm is dead is wrong. Just saying.
Just.
Anyways,
we're in a time. We're going back to last week. Let's move forward.
It's obvious, but anyways, my good for the week. Since Carl mentioned quarterbacks, Gardner Minshew. Minshew got his chance for the Eagles. 20 for 25, 250 yards, no interceptions. That dude's playing for a starting spot somewhere. And there was a lot of talk around Pittsburgh that they should have picked him up this year to play under Big Ben for a year. And now you're probably thinking they should have. I like Gardner Minshew. I wanted to toss his name out there. Great game, Gardner Minshew. He proved he can probably be a starter in this league, or at least get a chance to.
Do you want him to be your quarterback in Pittsburgh next year?
I mean, he'd be our next best option.
While they search for a long-term option, he's a great or I'm going to throw another name.
He's a great project.
So you guys might scoff at this, Mitch Trubisky. So you're going to be like, "Oh, his time with the Bears sucked." Blah blah blah. He took a Matt Nagy coached team to the playoffs, so that can't be overlooked. He's on a 1-year deal with Buffalo, so that's another guy that he could carry you from here to we need to find a quarterback, but you're going to carry us through.
He's also very mobile.
I have changed my stance on Mitch Trubisky. I don't think he's elite. I'm not putting him there or anything like that. But he has proven in his little spots in Buffalo that Matt Nagy was the problem, not Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, Matt Nagy has proven with all his quarterbacks that he's the problem. But Trubisky in the preseason did very well for Buffalo. I think I mentioned that on here a couple times. I thought that somebody would try and go after him. Minshew, while I do think Minshew just won himself a starting job for next year, I don't think I would want my team to be looking at Minshew as the future of our team. You know what I mean? Like I think if he is a starter in the league, he's in that 20 to 30 range. I don't think he's.
But for a team like the Steelers, who don't have a high draft pick and would probably have to trade up to get a quarterback, he's perfect for a year. See how he does. You don't have any other better options.
No, I agree with that. I just wouldn't want him to be the future of my team. I wouldn't want my team to invest as Minshew.
Pittsburgh's a great scenario for him. I think that's a great idea because they have the defense to where Minshew just has to be an Alex Smith or a Mac Jones. Just make the smart throws. Let the run do its job. The defense is going to take care of it as long as they're healthy. I think that's a great scenario for Pittsburgh moving forward.
It's a great scenario for Minshew, too, because he's probably going to sign a 1 year with Pittsburgh or, just a couple years with Pittsburgh, and he's going to do well. Like, Pittsburgh's probably not going to fall below 500. And so, to have that on your resume, like, hey, I helped the Steelers maintain, then you get to go play for the Texans on big money, or somebody else that's trash on big money, and you get to make money and retire. And I think Minshew's personality would rock Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a town that would accept the hell out of Minshew. Like they'd be like, hell yeah, this is our
The
dude
hard-working
right here.
town. Yep.
Yeah.
Steel
And the other
factories.
thing is,
Yes.
the other thing is, if you go the route of Minshew, the Steelers' biggest issue is their offensive line. So this coming draft, they could focus on the draft on the
They
line.
also will have the
trying to
most free agent.
draft.
They will be the most under the salary cap out of almost any team, I think, with Big Ben's contract coming off the books.
Yeah, that's $30 million right there.
Yeah, I think the only way you don't go get a Minshew is if you're in the hunt for like a Wilson, or if Watson gets cleared and you're in the hunt for Watson. Like, I think that's the only way you don't go get somebody like Minshew or Trubisky.
Or if there's somebody in the draft that you love. I mean, if there's somebody in the draft you love, you have to.
But how are you going to get up and get them?
Figure it out, man. You got to figure
They
it out.
signed Veach.
The
Haven't you
NFC
ever
East
Haven't
has
you ever
like
watched Draft Day? What's that? Isn't that what that movie's called?
Kevin Costner,
Yeah,
yeah,
you got to figure out what you got to do, man. You got to
Mac, no matter what. Yeah,
So Minshew is
And
25
deeply
years
trust.
old. There you go. Minshew is 25 years old. So say he goes to Pittsburgh for 2 years and proves that he is, Ryan Tannehill good, Kirk Cousins good, then he has the option to be that guy for a while. He's just got to prove that he is that guy.
I think I'm just saying, like, this is my problem. I think that Minshew was 0-15 or something like that with the Jaguars last year. I think their one win came with Foles. Like, Minshew has
it's the Jaguars. Like,
I'd give him a pass for it being the Jaguars.
0-15. They were 1-0 without him, and 0-15 with him. Like, that's
what's
not
Trevor Lawrence? He won 2 games down there. Like, come on.
Didn't he win that first game for him though? When Nick Foles got hurt, he came back, and I don't know. You guys want to move on to next week?
Yeah, we'll do a few. Well, did
Or
everybody
did
do their
Sweet-
good?
I think
Cody,
so.
did you hear again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine was the game last night, Monday night.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I forgot.
All right, well, I'll go ahead with my future. Mine is the future. This is 2 scheduling topics I've had, but the NFC East schedule of all the teams moving into the last few weeks.
Are you British? Schedule.
The Eagles have football team, Giants, football team, Cowboys. Cowboys have football team, Giants, football team, Cardinals. And then I somehow just I accidentally got rid of the Cowboys schedule. But Cowboys schedule is football team, Giants, football team, Cardinals, Eagles. So it's all NFC with 2 teams playing the Cardinals at the end. That's good. The playoffs are all on the line there. There's 3 teams fighting for the division and the one wild card spot probably. So we're going to find out who the best team in that division is in these last few weeks.
Yeah, the Washington and Cowboys play this week. Washington sitting 2 games behind them. They still have 2 games against them. So this one's at home. So we said it a couple weeks back. Washington could really make this division interesting this week with a win at home against the Cowboys to fall within 1 game.
I keep saying that I don't see a scenario where the Cowboys don't win the division, and the Cowboys keep leaving it open like someone else could win this division. I think the Cowboys are going to win this division. They've got a 2-game head start on all these teams, and I think they're good enough to win the division. But I don't know.
The Eagles
The
Eagles are going to beat one of them. Out of the 2 games they each have to play against the Eagles are going to win one of those 4 games. So,
Boys, it's December, right? And so Dallas, yeah, they're under a roof. But for teams that are built to play in this weather that we've been talking about, the Eagles are that team. They've rushed for over 180 yards in the past 3 or 4 games. Like, they're built for that. So, I would be on the lookout. I think the Eagles are going to make some noise. Mike
be
Bowden.
fair, the Cowboys' running game might be the best in the NFL when they commit to it.
because of
with
Pollard.
and
Because of
Elliott.
Pollard.
yeah, Pollard and Elliott both back there. That's a tough dynamic backfield.
If they commit to it.
Yeah, so the
if they
NFC
commit
East,
to it, they have to commit.
They like
to
to throw the ball more than they should.
But when's the last year where you couldn't say this about the NFC East at the end? You know what I mean? I mean, the NFC East is always super close. Nobody ever runs away. Like, the winner is going to be just barely over 500, like it every year. So,
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So, I think with Cody stepping away, the AFC wildcard picture. Bengals got the 49ers this week at home. That's no cupcake. Bengals laid an egg went down 20, spotted the Chargers 24 points after we thought the Bengals were for real. So they're an inconsistent team. The Bills play at the Buccaneers. I'm probably chalking that up to an L. You got the Steelers, Vikings. I don't know that the Vikings are the best matchup for the Steelers to play. Vikings have a great offense. And then you got the Broncos getting to play the Lions. So Broncos have a golden opportunity to get back in this. Chargers get the Giants. That's probably a win. But you could see the AFC wildcard get even closer this week. Who do the Raiders play? The Raiders play the Chiefs. That's not a good matchup. But Broncos have a chance this week to get back in it. Bills playing at the Buccaneers. The Steelers win. Bills lose. Steelers are in the playoffs. So I think you're going to see some more shuffling in that AFC wildcard.
And meanwhile, the Colts are at home on a bye, hoping everybody loses this week.
And so are the Dolphins. The Dolphins are on a bye as well, sitting at 6 and 7.
The Dolphins get the Jets after the bye too, so they're just like, come on, baby.
Yeah, everyone lose, and we're sitting pretty.
A wild statistic: the only team eliminated from the playoffs right now is the Houston Texans. The Jaguars are still in it, the Lions are still in it, the Jets are still in it, but the Texans are eliminated.
So I threw it in group chat. Guy on TikTok, for those who are watching, the Lions last week had 64 scenarios where they could be eliminated from the playoffs. 62 scenarios where they could be eliminated from the playoffs, and none of those 62 scenarios happened. And they won, which was obviously half of the scenarios. So they move on to another day. They go 5-0 here down the stretch. You never know what could happen.
All they're going to do is ruin their first pick in the draft if they win any more games.
Yeah, they just need to lose. They need to lose and move on from golf.
The ghost of Matthew Stafford.
Yeah,
Who's the ghost now? I mean, they both can't be ghosts, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how they get rid of him with the money that he's being paid. Nobody's going to take him for that.
How many years? I think he has only one more year on his contract, right?
Is that it?
I believe. I think it was 2 years left. I think 30-some million each year or something stupid like that.
Bite the bullet, get the dude from Pitt, and go on.
That faker. He shouldn't get
that dirty faker.
So, you mentioned AFC playoffs. You mentioned NFC East. My future, ironically, was just the amazing playoff races we have in general. AFC East, Bills and Patriots both fighting for that division. Obviously, the Bills really hurt themselves on Monday because I was thinking about this before that game last night. But still, I mean, it's still a battle there in the AFC East. AFC North, you have the Ravens, Bengals.
All four teams are
Browns.
Still potential winning that division.
Theoretically, the Colts are not out of it in the AFC South. Obviously, we discussed that it's pretty much over. The AFC West, as much as I want to say the Chiefs have it locked up, you still have the Chargers a game behind. The Chiefs have already lost to the Chargers and the Broncos. They're 2-1 in the division. I'm sorry, they only lost to the Chargers. The Chiefs are 2-1 in the division. Chargers 2-1 in the division. We lost to the Chargers head to head, so the Chargers aren't out of it by any means. NFC East, the wild cards are crazy right now. I mean, it's just with the parity that we've had in the league this year, it's going to be a fun stretch down the end here.
And we get an extra game.
And there's an
that
extra
game is going to be huge.
So I think that what that extra game does, it gives teams a little bit more time to get going throughout the season, like the Dolphins. The Dolphins this year.
True.
I think you're going to see a lot more of that, with the extra game and the extra playoff seed. NFL did a heck of a job. I really like what the NFL did. It added a lot more drama to the end of the season.
That's a good point, because if you think about it, if you were only playing 16 games, theoretically they're 8-4, Washington 6-6. Dallas would all but have the division wrapped up.
It gives you more time to
Miami
get your mojo.
Miami would already have 7 losses, and they would have to basically win out to even have a chance at the playoffs. which
Yeah,
is
9
still-
and 7 probably wouldn't get you in, even with 7 playoff teams this year in the AFC.
No, I think it's definitely a good thing they added that game, but it was a good thing for the NFL that this happened on the first year of their
Yeah, no
17-game
kidding.
season.
It
So,
made
like,
them look really
you know,
smart.
if you have 8 division leaders that just completely just ball out and run away with it, and week 16 and 17 doesn't mean shit, then, everybody's going to be like, I'm out on this. But with all these playoff races, they're going to come down to the end on quite a few of them.
Oh,
Wild cards are going to switch hands. So it played into the NFL's hands that they picked this
Can
year.
you imagine the PowerPoints and spreadsheets and shit we're going to see on week 17 on how teams can wiggle their way into the playoffs and stuff? It's going to be nuts. Good thing. Good for the NFL. Good for the playoffs. Good for the fans. But it's going to be a wild ride these last few weeks.
And it can give more. It can give more heated debates at Christmas time because there's more regular season left to switch that up. So
yeah, the longer the Chargers hang around, the more I have to have this discussion on. This is their year.
we need to go back and roll the tape when you talking about the Chargers earlier in the year.
No,
Yeah, they were your favorite team for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of the people who actually was down on the NFL for adding the extra week of regular season. I said, players already getting injured. Why would you add an extra week of the regular season? And this first year of it has proven me wrong because it's going to be a wild ending to the season.
Definitely is. My future was also just playoff races in general. I did miss something when we were talking about the Vikings earlier, though, that I do want to point out. 4 of their top 5 highest paid players on their defense are currently injured and were injured last week against Detroit. So that plays a role as well. Like, that's not a good thing. But yeah, my future was also the playoff races. I mean, this is fun. This is why sports are fun. When the stuff gets down like this, the NBA, when they added those play-in games, they had the players hate it or whatever. That's fun. It's like, hey, win or go home. Like, that kind of stuff is always fun as a fan to sit back and watch. So I'm all for it. When a team gets hot in baseball in September and rattles off 17 wins and barely makes the playoffs, aka the Cardinals, like, that's fun. And yeah, you get bounced in the wild card game, but it was still fun to end your season like that. Like, because you knew you weren't a World Series team, but you still showed your promise.
You had a chance to make the Dodgers not a World Series team, which is good in everyone's book.
And they still weren't, so we still...
Pretty crazy. We're going to start week 14, and there's 25 teams in the NFL that legitimately have a shot at the playoffs right now. There's 31 teams that aren't eliminated. There's 25 teams that have a legit shot at making the playoffs.
Yeah. And unfortunately, one of those teams is the damn Patriots. So anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for us here this week. We appreciate you guys listening along, or girls, or ladies. If you're grandmas, we appreciate all the grandmas on the podcast.
We love our grandmas.
We do love our grandmas. Grandmas, they just bring the world together. Like, you can't hate a grandma, man. Like, grandmas are the best. But anyway, until next week, watch football. It's getting down to crunch time. It's a good time to be watching if you're one of those kind of sit back and, just watch Red Zone. Start watching your team more and be good out there. Tell your grandma, 4th and 30 podcast. We like you guys.